I apologize for that. I was logged in on the wrong account and I am the host for this meeting and I didn't realize that it should be letting everyone in right now.
Awesome.
Yeah, as soon as I told you, Elizabeth, that you were the host, I was like, wait, am I logged in on the wrong account? And I was not logged in on the IMPO account.
Well, I was going to say, I've never had it. Normally it gives you that nice prompt that says, if you are the host, log in here. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't know what to do if it like that prompt doesn't come up. So I was glad we were able to troubleshoot here.
I apologize for the error on my part. Welcome everyone to our CEDS Strategy Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I know we have a lot of good work to get to, and so I'm going to turn everything over to Elizabeth, and I will be here listening intently and will hop in only if needed.
So Rose, before you go, can you make me have screen sharing privileges here? And then we will also need your assistance when we get to the discussion to zoom out into breakout rooms.
Yes. Cool. I just made you co-host.
Awesome.
And then let me know when you want breakout rooms and I will do that for you.
Sounds good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for bearing with some of our tech challenges here this afternoon, but we're excited to get started. I was looking at our agenda and our timeline, and we have a ton of information to share out with you today, but I don't know at the same time if we'll take our full 90 minutes either. So no problem getting started, just a few minutes late here in terms of ending on time. So what we have for you, again, I'm Elizabeth Scott, Senior Consultant with TIP Strategies, serving as the project manager for this project on behalf of our team. Joining me today is Katrina Parkey, the Associate Consultant on this project, who's helping to pull all of the pieces together. She'll be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions if you have questions today, especially as I'm moving through information, please feel free to put that in there, and then Katrina will jump in if it's something that would benefit the group or be able to add. I will warn you again, we have a ton of information to report out. So you're going to be hearing a lot of my voice over the next half hour, 45 minutes or so. We will be using the Mentimeter tool to grab feedback from you today. For today's use of Mentimeter, it is primarily responding and getting your feedback on some things, and not really meant for discussion. You know, if there's something that comes up that you want to share with the group, great, but I'm not planning to switch back and forth in between those Mentimeters, and I'll prompt you when there is a Mentimeter question that comes up. But we are going to talk about discovery, the project update, share with you where we are, then go into discovery phase findings, jump into breakout rooms for you all to network a little bit and react to some of the information that we found in the first half. And then the second half of our meeting is going to be focused on the plan structure and how everything is going to fit together and be organized. And then we'll just talk about next steps and if there are any other questions. So with that, again, the project goal: develop a comprehensive economic development strategy, which will be used to form an economic development district, a requirement of the Economic Development Administration to qualify for that EDD. So lots of acronyms there. The jurisdiction for the project that we are talking about here: Boone, Hamilton, Hancock, Hendricks, Johnson, Madison, Marion, Morgan counties. So that 8-county region. So anytime we refer to region, we are specifically talking about these 8 counties. So we have just jumped into our opportunity phase. Just as a reminder, we did not convene a steering committee meeting in July. So the last time we spoke with you all, we are still in the discovery phase. We are now well underway in the opportunity phase, which is really where we are exploring those initial strategies that came up from our discovery phase. We are in the middle of working group meetings. Our researcher is looking at best practices from across the country Strategy on Forming an Economic Development District. And looking ahead over the next 2 months, we will convene again in September. And then in October, we will have draft strategies to share with you. That's the last step before we move into the final phase of the project, implementation. So it's a preview of what's to come. What informs the strategic plan? This is one of my favorite slides, and you'll hear it in almost all of my presentations. This is a data-driven strategy. And when we talk about data, it comes from 3 different sources. The first one being that qualitative or that quantitative side, socio-demographic information, target industries, occupational risk tool, which we looked at COVID impacts. The second side of that is what you all tell us. There is only so much that we can read in past reports. You all are all on the ground and really know where the opportunities and challenges are. So we rely on you to help fill in those gaps during our interview and workshop sessions. And we combine all of that together and help you formulate the strategies and action items to help achieve some of those opportunities. And we also leverage our best practices and work across the country to help illustrate that. So with that, moving into our discovery phase findings, and I am going to jump out of our PowerPoint here and transition into Tableau Reader, which is the platform that we use for sharing data. It's a data visualization platform. This tool is currently in the hands of the IMPO and will be shared with you all. These are the county data profiles.
Elizabeth, I'm going to jump in for just a second. All of you should have received an email late this morning that had the link, the Tableau, and the link to download the reader for Tableau, along with some instructions. Those were Adobe Cloud links because of the file size. Some of you may need to work with your IT to allow you access to install the reader if you don't have those administrative privileges. But if you have challenges, reach out to me and I'll see what we can do. But you should have that in your inbox.
Awesome. Thanks, Rose. So some of you may have already had a chance to play around with this. It's a pretty cool tool. I'm just going to take you through the first tab. So this is the menu screen, and you're able to navigate directly through the menu from this homepage. And then you can also access everything through the bottom tabs as well. The second tab is the key findings, and these are key findings specific to the data. We will also have a key findings section in the final plan, and that combines these data key findings along with our key findings from the qualitative section, so the qualitative research throughout the project. So there will be a little bit of a difference, but these are really focused on the findings that are specific to this Tableau document. So going back to the menu, the first things I'm going to pull out, and again, they relate to the 4 key findings that are on this first page, is going to be looking at educational attainment across the region. One of the cool things about Tableau, if you're not familiar, is the hovering feature. So this chart in and of itself can look fairly overwhelming, especially since there are so many different bars. And one of the unique features of Tableau is the internet activity and the dynamic nature. So you can scroll and hover over any of these bars, and they will tell you and give you more detailed information, so you don't have to look back to the color code legend on the side. You'll be able to see that interactive throughout here. So looking at Hamilton County, bachelor's degree, 37.3% of the population holds a bachelor's degree. Another 22% beyond that holds a graduate degree. And if you visualize the further to on your screen, it would be the right side is the higher the education levels. And you can see almost a direct slant going down the screen, demonstrating that education attainment levels vary dramatically across the region. There are 2 distinct counties, Madison and Morgan counties, that are falling behind the national average, as well as the average for Indiana and most of the other counties within our 8-county region in terms of educational attainment. So from here, the second tab that we're going to look at is income across our 8-county region. Again, we can hover over these to find additional information about the composition for this. It's showing median household income. It's also showing the total number of households so that you're able to compare, across the board and, average in Hendricks County. We're looking at about just almost $82,000 with about 59,000 households, compared to Hancock County, which only has 28, almost 29,000 households with a median household income of 74,000. Key findings on here, again, we're seeing the same thing, same trends. Madison and Marion County outliers. We saw that on educational attainment levels lagging for the region. Same thing with household income. So strong potential correlation there between educational attainment and household income. We're going to jump ahead. I'm going to go back to this menu bar to zip us ahead to the housing section, and we're going to look at housing costs across the region. So a few things here, something that we heard really on in a lot of our conversations, and certainly a trend that's happening nationally, or what's happening to housing costs and housing availability across the United States. That's home values are increasing, and what that is doing to income. So again, here looking, you can see the full gamut of the 8-county region. And you can also go up to this top menu and select and unselect. So if you just wanted to see, if we wanted to take off, with these, sorry, it's just a delay there. So if we wanted to take off Indiana and the United States, we could, to give a more, just hone in on those 8 counties. So that is a feature that's available here. But looking at the value of homes, same thing. We're seeing Marion and Madison County trailing the region in terms of home values as well as rent costs. And then the next slide, or the next section, housing affordability. The percentage of households that spend more than 30% of household income on housing expenses. First 2 counties that are dominating there are Marion County and Madison County. And we also know that these counties disproportionately have some of the lowest median household incomes in the US. So they're, or in the region. So they're even being stretched further with that 30% spending on household housing expenses. The last tab we're going to look at is labor force indicators. And there's a lot in these sections, and I don't want to take too much time, but wanted to go back to this slide and then also look at labor force participation rates. And so here in Marion County, you're looking at a 67% participation rate, and an unemployment rate of 6.3%. Madison County, 58%, 5.6%, and then Morgan County, 69.2% participation rates, and an unemployment rate of 5.1%. So similar trends we're seeing with educational attainment rates, median household incomes being stretched on housing costs are all correlating with labor force, and there are potential opportunities here as well. So I am going to jump out of Tableau and go back into our PowerPoint here. And we have some static images from the Tableau that I just shared with you. So anyone who didn't join us today is able to see those, but wanted to talk about our qualitative findings. In June, we convened 12 different roundtables across the entire 8-county region with these focus areas. So attainable housing, manufacturing, distribution, logistics, sports development, life sciences, talent development, talent attraction, pre-K through 12 education, infrastructure, environment. CVB is Convention Visitors Bureau, destination, also known as DMO, so destination marketing offices. Entrepreneurship, and then chamber local economic development organizations are LEDOs. So very wide stakeholder engagement. We had between 10 to 15, sometimes closer to 20 participants for each of these areas. So combined with the information that we found in those qualitative findings in our Economic Explorer, matched with our interviews and roundtables, we came up with our SWOT analysis. And those are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We have them mapped here on range of control. I also, on some of these, noted even if there might be a lot of local control, if it's a national issue like housing, you'll see that a little bit away because national policy helps shape that too. So strengths for the region, arts and culture, 16 tech. Everyone is really excited about the opportunity that the Innovation District will bring to the region. Quality of life, of course, the region's legacy, sports clusters, diverse industries, geographic location as the crossroads of America. Relatively affordable when compared to Chicago and the coast. I know this one is tough, especially with home values increasing so much, but is still affordable. Collaboration among regional partners, healthcare systems, of course, the airports, all for strengths. Weaknesses, stagnant growth in parts of the region, regional public transit, those educational attainment rates, which we saw through the data. Long commute averages, average in the region, we saw exceeding 20 minutes, anything below 20 minutes, anything below 15 minutes would be considered a short commute average. Lack of multifamily housing, an aging population, broadband service, and this is in both urban and rural areas. We heard about the urban digital divide, but we know this is certainly an issue in rural areas. And then access to capital for small business, again, something that happened, we're seeing at state and national levels, and also heavily influenced by outside policy there. So that's why that is further out on the graph. Opportunities. Remote workers and talent attraction. People are really excited about that possibility, the growth of the tech sector and innovation. And when we talk about tech, not defining this as solely as app developers, but what tech means to other industries like agriculture and the opportunities within life science and pharmaceuticals and manufacturing, and how tech plays a role into that. Transit-oriented development, urban infill, the rapid transit lines, workforce development, work-based learning, apprenticeships and internships, inclusive and equitable growth initiatives that are already happening, and the momentum that's building across the region for that, and then rural and suburban development. For threats, lack of economic development tools. We heard air, water quality, and environmental concerns, the long-term water supply for the region, low-wage jobs, racism, racial inequality, poverty, crime rates. Over on the state, in the next band, state policies limiting economic growth. And then out at national, and then even into the global space, we're seeing rising home prices across the country, childcare options, early childhood education. Again, a lot of that is influenced by national policy right now, and issue across the country, even though it's certainly a local issue as well. Increased automation, especially around manufacturing, distribution, logistics, that's the MDL acronym, and then trade policies, and then of course, COVID-19 uncertainty, especially with rise in this Delta variant and seeing what happens with that. And our first opportunity for Mentimeter feedback. So if you want to log into menti.com, that is the code. I will give you all a second. And Katrina, if you could pop this code into the chat so that when we move on at any time, if you want to get back into the Mentimeter, you will be able to find that in the chat. But the first question in Mentimeter is to respond to the SWOT analysis. If there's anything else you would like to see in there, and go ahead and enter that. And while you all do that, I'm going to move on to the second part of our findings from the discovery phase. And those are the working groups. So based on our feedback from our Economic Explorer past reports in the region, as well as our stakeholder input, 4 areas of focus really emerged as areas that the region wanted to take a deep dive in with subject area matter experts to come up with solutions and really decide where the CEDS could be most influential. The first one is infrastructure, the second workforce, the third group, innovation and technology. And again, we talked a lot in this group about the broad, definition of technology cross-cutting multiple sectors. And then the fourth group was equitable growth. So we are currently in the midst of having our second meetings with these groups, really focused on solutions at this point and identifying some early strategies. We've already convened. 2 groups have had their second meetings. We have 2 more groups that will have their second meetings this week and next week. And then mid-August, we'll move into those third group. So these are the draft infrastructure focus areas. They are draft because we have not had our second meeting with infrastructure yet, but these are the 5 focus areas that we are looking at covering there, focusing on land opportunities. So the under-resourced land and gray and brownfield opportunities, especially in under-resourced communities, broadband expansion in both urban and rural areas, transit, safe routes to and convenient routes to employment sites, transit-oriented development. So linking that to the 4th on the list, housing, really again focused on that transit-oriented development, having diverse housing options throughout the region. And the 5th area, water quality and supply concerns, and looking at strategies under those. For innovation and tech, we met with this team this morning. The first area, business retention and expansion. We've talked a lot about growing the pie and what that looks like, and the importance of continuing to support the businesses in the region, as well as recruiting in more businesses. Really important key factor here is leveraging the outstanding work that the regional LEDOs, the Indy Chamber, CICP is already doing. So we know a tremendous amount of work is already being taken place in this space. Second area, talent and development, increasing diversity in the tech sectors. We know that, or target sectors, we know that the region's traded target sectors tend to have higher average wages than other sectors, and what we can do to increase the diversity and access to opportunity within those sectors. And then the notion of tech beyond app development. So how and where are those cross synergies between different industries? So we talk about the intersection of tech and ag and the intersection of tech and life sciences. Ideas all around expanded entrepreneurial mentorship networks. Something that we focused on in this group is talked about the lack of successful exits that entrepreneurs have had in the region, and that can be difficult for sharing those best practices and sharing that knowledge with upcoming entrepreneurs. So really tapping into that ecosystem that is already there and being able to expand that. And then the 4th area, startup support. And we see this more formalized than the 3rd category, also focusing on improving access to potential risk capital for early stage startup funding. The 3rd area, again, these are draft because we have not convened the workforce group for the second meeting yet, but focusing on private sector engagement, the collaboration between education programs and employers, making sure that we have those needs. Training, this is everything from on-the-job training, upskilling, reskilling, internships, apprenticeships, certifications. Again, fantastic work already happening across the region in this space. So we'll be identifying opportunities to scale programs to ensure that they are able to reach more people. That is one of the goals of a CEDS, is to bring everything to have a really strong understanding of all of the different regional programs that are in place, helping to leverage those best practices and highlighting what is already going on. Third space, talent attraction, the focus on quality of the jobs and not just the quantity. And then the last area, employment barriers. So addressing barriers, including transit, housing, and childcare that may be limiting people from accessing their full potential in the workforce. And our fourth area is equitable growth. And I originally, when we put together this slide deck, we had equitable growth as number one. It was also the first group that we convened. And when I was going through these, there is so much overlap between our other three areas, focusing on infrastructure and talent and tech, that I thought it made sense to pull this in the back, because if there's anything that we have heard loud and clear, it's that equitable growth needs to be intentional. And that although some of these things are already happening in other areas, if we are not focusing on the equity component of these things, the needle won't be moved in these areas. So for workforce, really focusing on high potential at-risk youth, or the opportunity youth category. That would be young adults that are currently not in school or not in the workforce. The second area, broadband. We talked about physical expansion of broadband networks in our infrastructure area, but we also heard that there needs to be more digital literacy programs and access to devices. Possibly a silver lining of the pandemic. We've seen more and more schools that are focusing on having a one-to-one student to device ratio. So hopefully getting access to the devices in the hands of families to help move that needle, but looking at where there are still opportunities there. Transit, connecting people who want a job to where the jobs are. We have a really compelling data set showing that Marion County has lost a lot of manufacturing, distributions, and logistic jobs to the surrounding counties. How can we connect that skilled workforce? How can we potentially upskill and reskill that workforce and connect them with the jobs? Housing. Housing in infrastructure is really focused on transit-oriented development and reducing barriers to actually increasing, scope and density across the board. For equitable growth, really focusing on attainable housing stock. So making sure that there is housing for those in the workforce, that it is affordable. So looking at potentially at density, improving density, and potential infill opportunities. And then the last area, again, this is something that we talked about in the infrastructure group around the opportunities for redevelopment for brown and gray fields. But under this category, focusing on the environmental challenges and what the impacts are to surrounding neighborhoods of brown fields. So there are environmental justice concerns, potential contamination, and cleaning up those sites. To have those regions or those communities, that under-resourced communities that surrounds benefit from that, and get them ready for hopefully higher and better reuse. So with that, you get to have a break from hearing me talk. We'll move into discussion at breakout rooms. Spend about 15 minutes. The format for these, sharing your name, role, organization. This is an opportunity for you to network with people that may not be in your normal circle. And then thoughts or questions since our last meeting, anything that surprised you from the data findings we shared or the roundtables, the SWAT plan, or anything else. One of my favorite things about economic development is how when all of these dots start to connect and you think of something that you thought was way outside economic development, and how that really comes into the fold. So if there's something that going through all of this, that sparked an idea, this is the format to share it in, and then we'll all reconvene in about 15 minutes. So Rose, any last words
one of the
before we
limitations of Zoom is that we do not get a recording of the breakout room discussions. So I will ask that one person in each breakout room take notes and email me their notes when the meeting is over so that we have a way to capture those. You can whatever process you use to decide who is taking notes, that is fair game. It can be like the person who speaks first, it can be by consensus, it can be somebody, you know, whatever works for whoever's in your breakout room, but we would like to be able to capture the discussion that happened in those, and we can't be in all places at the same time. So I am going to break you out into 6 breakout rooms. You will be assigned automatically. There should be about 7 people per room with that system. So enjoy. We'll come back in 15 or so minutes. I will send you a heads up before we reconvene, everyone.
Thanks, Rose.
Hi, I think I got kicked. This is Kelly Margot. I think I got kicked off. I don't think I'm in a breakout room. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
I just reassigned you. Remember, in your breakout rooms, there are a couple people on the phone. As everyone is coming back in, I'll use this as one opportunity, and I'll take another at the end of the meeting to remind everyone that COVID permitting, we will do our October meeting in person. And we moved that back a week later than we normally meet in order to accommodate some scheduling. But it's going to be great to be able to have an in-person meeting, assuming we're able to do that. Everyone should be back in about 10 seconds, and Elizabeth will take us forward.
Great, thanks everyone. I hope your roundtable breakout rooms were productive and you had some good conversations, opportunities to connect. Happy to open it up if anyone has, I won't call on any group specifically, but if anybody has anything they wanted to share with the larger group, happy to open the floor for that.
I think our group kind of, as long as I don't have to take any more notes, I think we came up with the idea of balanced growth, being purposeful. If we continue to see the demographic developments, some areas are going to get poorer, some areas are going to get richer. And that segment separation is not a healthy environment for a community, a city, or a region. Although we don't want to impede development, certainly don't want to slow up economic increases in the region. We think kind of a balanced approach to trying to be purposeful about some of these stats. And in our particular case, my particular case, maybe I want to say is maybe equitable development may not be exactly the right term. I know that's the term of the current thought, but we have to be very purposeful about how to invest and how to direct and create opportunity for people. And that may start at K through 12 and work through a process with looking at, continue to do trade school, talking about the skilled trades, which may not be a traditional pathway for some, but definitely is a meaningful future for a lot of people. And the sectors are all looking at how do we recruit students and how do we recruit apprentices. Things along that nature is kind of the direction we went. I don't want to dominate time. We talked about the commuter tax, the pluses and minuses in the concept of it, and how do you actually share wealth. That was probably an open-ended question for the greater good. Probably much more than a 15-minute breakout session. So there you go.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate you sharing. Anyone else feedback or comments on the conversation?
Yeah, I guess group 5, just very quickly. We questioned if the data in the Tableau chart was disaggregated by race and ethnicity regarding the educational attainment, enrollment, completion of percentage of 2- and 4-year post-secondary attainment, field of study. Yeah, so if that data is disaggregated that way, I think that would be helpful. That's what our group discussed. We also talked about maybe a missing component of a brand for the region. Austin, Tulsa, some other regions, have discernible brands, but we're not sure that our area has one. I guess 3 decades ago was the Indianapolis as the sports capital of the world, but not sure if that's still, that brand is still relevant. We also talked about there are similar conversations happening around the region. One notable is the Business Equity Initiative, initiative. So those conversations happening, and we talked about how do we coalesce all those discussions.
One of the things I'll share is that we've been working on pulling together plans from around the region, different organizations, different units of government, different local economic development organizations, and looking at the initiatives in them and kind of making a matrix of those. It's not complete yet. We're close. And once we've had a chance to look through it, we will share it with the entire group. And if there's something that you don't think we're aware of, please make sure that we get that. And if when we send it out, there's something missing, let us know. We only know what we know. And so we're pulling together as much as we can, but we need to know what everyone is doing. From the beginning, I've said, bring your stuff. We're not trying to create something new. We're trying to create synergies between existing initiatives. And so that's a great point, Anthony, and a good reminder for me to be able to tell you we're working on it and we need you.
Great. I think last thing quickly, I think Angie brought this point up about increasing the skill sets of our community as far as the workforce development skill sets. That work of that talent development, I guess, is happening at a very granular level, you know, in a smaller programmatic areas, you know, as opposed to the broader policy initiatives. So it's, you know, just thinking about how to capture those things in the kind of smaller initiatives that are taking place. I think that's right. And I guess Angie can chime in more on that if I'm not being very clear.
I think the only thing I add in what I was bringing up in our breakout room, Anthony and others, was just that, you know, when you look at the data, the challenges that exist to really try to get to, you know, a state goal of by 2025 of educational attainment level to make us competitive, that we need to monitor those community indicators to see if we're making like scaled changes, but like a lot of the work that is happening is at a very intimate, small level with programmatic outcomes in the nature of 10s or 20s. And that does contribute to the change in community indicators, but the time for that to happen is pretty exhaustive. And we would maybe look as if we're not making impact unless we also have underneath those bigger community indicators, like performance measures that are really showing tracking at that level, you know, the changes as a result of investments and intentionality by
Right.
leadership. Yeah.
Performance measures are absolutely something that need to be built into the CEDS. It's one of the requirements of the Economic Development Administration. And we will be tracking those that we agree need to be in the plan. One of the things that's going to be difficult with the broad plan is making sure that we're not tracking hundreds of indicators, and that what we choose to track is something that we think we can actually see progress on, have good data for, and are able to understand the changes around it. That's some of the lessons we've learned with our regional transportation performance measures, as we've tried to track and report on those over the past 3 years. And so we'll be keeping that in mind as we move through the CEDS as well. So it probably won't be all things to all people, but we do have the intent of trying to track things as much as possible.
Thanks, Rose. And I couldn't have said that any better. The only thing to add is that is one of the reasons when I showed the overall plan timeline, why we have so much focus on the implementation phase of the project. We will also, since we will pretty much already have strategies done at that point, that'll be a key component of that, is helping to identify those metrics, looking at the opportunities to actually match the metrics to the strategies and see where we can have those qualitative metrics to monitor implementation. And thanks to Angela and Anthony for your comments. Anything else before we move on?
Debbie has put some good information in the chat, and I know
Okay.
we're capturing that chat as well, but just raising that.
The only other thing I would add, and I think it's the challenge of the regional approach to this, is kind of this amalgamation, which if you look at the definition, it uses two words, combining or unifying, and those are two very different words. I think it's going to be important how we unify those few amounts and recognize how there's a difference between median and average, right? I mean, it's when we look at we talked about that in our breakout yesterday in terms of equity, in terms of commute times, depends on type of transportation. And when we talk about education, depends on people, class, and location. And so, yes, that's a lot of statistics, and that's a lot of data, but that is the lay of the land. We got there in a slow process. It's going to take a slow process back, and that unification where one county or one region says, that's not my issue, that's not my problem, I don't really care about that. I've got this, and I think that cross-pollination is going to be a critical part, how the dashboard, the metrics, the measurements unify rather than just combine the region. Because I think it's the unification of being able to bring different people groups in different places together around some of those common challenges that may not be mine, but they're a part of the barrier to me getting to the regional success that we need to have. And I think that's just an overarching, where's the kind of the empathy of the sugar to solve this rather than the stick of one's gain is another's loss.
Absolutely, Matt. One of the things I will say, and we come across this in all types of planning processes, whether it's economic development, transportation, land use, sometimes the data that we wish we had isn't available or isn't able to be disaggregated in the way that we want it to. And some of the data can be, and we'll look at doing that in some of these areas, but there's also things that we think would be super great to have that we either don't have uniformly from all counties, which is often the case with health data. And then there's certain things that we just don't have access to in any usable format for the regional scale. And so we'll do our very best, but also know that sometimes there's limitations to what's available. And it's challenging because you really want to know, and that information will help you solve challenges. But at the same time, if it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. So.
Thanks, Rose. And that's a great point too with the Economic Explorer. If there are questions on why we chose the data sets that we did, one explanation is because we wanted to make sure that it was available for every county in our 8-county region. We know there is a ton more information that is just in the MSA level, just at the city level, but we really wanted to focus on providing those county profiles so that we could look and have that holistic picture. But if there are any questions, feel free to get back to Rose, or, you can reach out directly to me on that as well. But with that, I'd like to move on to the plan, the structure, and talking about, we had a preview of this back in June. Based on some feedback, we were able to refine this a little bit more. So top level, a requirement of the CEDS is to have a vision statement. The plan is designed with strategies for 5-year implementation, but the vision is designed to be stretching 15, 20 years into the horizon on where the region wants to go. Supporting the vision, I've played around with a different wording for this yellow level here. I've landed on principles for right now. Would welcome your all feedback on how we frame this, but these are the things that land across all of our different goal areas and action items, and I'll go into those in the next slide. And then we have the framework, the actual goals and strategies, and then that bottom level, the actions and associated metrics that go along with that. So in our very first CEDS kickoff meeting, we asked you all, what does connectivity mean to you in regard to economic development planning? We ended up with this awesome word cloud with themes ranging from transportation to education to housing to equity, infrastructure, broadband, collaboration across the board. And so we thought connectivity was a really powerful word when we talk about economic development because it links so many different things, which is such an important part of a CEDS plan. The second question that we asked is, using one word, what's your vision for the Indianapolis region? Again, when we talk about region, it's in the context of our 8-county CEDS region. Inclusive was big and bold and right in the middle. That meant a lot of people responded that. Right alongside it is vibrant, thriving, innovative, progressive, resilient, equitable, diverse, bold, welcoming, really great descriptor words for describing the region. So taking those two things into account, we drafted a vision statement. So the Central Indiana Economic Development District is committed to strong collaboration and partnerships that move the regional economy forward by prioritizing equitable growth and enhancing connectivity to ensure a vibrant and resilient future for all residents. So if you're still logged into your Mentimeter, you have the opportunity to weigh in on what you think about this draft vision statement, things that we need to include, things that need to be omitted, any suggestions for edits, happy to take that feedback there. Again, this is vision statement is the top of that pyramid and help guide all of the actions that fall under it. If you need the link to the Mentimeter, if you need to log back in, is in the chat. Oh, and I have it up on the screen as well. So give you a minute to be able to log in there to share feedback. And once you log into Mentimeter, that vision statement is in there again as well. All right, so that second layer of the pyramid, I had it outlined as guiding, as principles. We could also call this themes. These are, like I said, they're the things that wind and intersect in all different aspects of the plan. Partnerships and regional alignment, equitable growth. Again, this was the interconnectivity came out loud and clear with our working groups, where we had a number of different things that fell within those infrastructure, tech, and talent groups. Recovery and resiliency, key hallmarks of a CEDS plan, important for this region. And then again, that connectivity word that gets to touch all of those concentric circles surrounding economic development. Proposed framework, and you can think of these as the different chapters of the CEDS that areas will cover. So strategies under talent, innovation, and place. This aligns well with our working groups, which were focused on innovation and tech. Place covers infrastructure, and then of course talent. These are some of the strategy areas we would expect to see under this framework. So under talent, looking at workforce development, opportunity youth, again, that narrow segment of the population that's not in school, not in work. Pre-K to 12 education, talent retention, talent attraction, and childcare. And childcare is unique in this spot because it's twofold, right? So we know that positive for early childhood experiences can help later outcomes. That's one of the things that the Brookings report highlighted. So the early preparation for school and ultimately workforce, but then the childcare aspect of increasing opportunity for women, especially Black, Indigenous, people of color. We know that childcare are one of those barriers to work that was identified. So increasing the workforce that way as well. And that second section, innovation, where we really see the LEDOs, the chambers, corporate indie partnership really standing out with the fantastic work that they're doing, how the CEDS can help support that, opportunities to scale any initiatives to ensure that the full region is reaching that potential. So focusing in on target sectors, business development, small business, entrepreneurship, and opportunities for tech transfer from higher ed. So that commercialization process, once something's developed at a university, how it can turn into a traded sector industry. And then the last area, place. And that includes infrastructure, the environment and natural resources, downtown development, housing, outdoor recreation, tourism, all of the things that, you know, combine into those placemaking, which all three overlap and intersect with each other. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the proposed framework. And again, if you're still in the Mentimeter, you should have been able to respond to those if there's anything that we were missing from any of those areas. But I'll pause here if anybody has any questions before we wrap up and move on to next steps on what we can expect from here. All right, so moving on to next steps. We are currently convening our working group sessions. We have to finish up working group meetings number 2 for workforce and infrastructure. And then we will have meetings number 3 for all of the groups. Those run through mid-August. When we convene again in September, we will have some of those findings for you and outcomes from the working group. And then as Rose mentioned, as we're all coming back from the roundtables, we are planning to have our opportunity workshop, which is where we share draft strategies, October 12th. And the plan is for that meeting to be in real life, in person. We will also have a virtual option as well. So regardless of what the circumstances are for COVID, we will still convene on October 12th, maybe in person, but always the virtual option as well. So that is where we are going over the next few months. And with that, we have a few minutes if there are any questions or closing thoughts.
I'd just like to hop in and say, I know that the virtual format can be difficult for some of the discussions, and there's some richness that we lose in that. But we're operating in an environment in which it's difficult to bring large groups together. We sincerely hope and are planning to bring everyone back together in October. With cases spiking, we'll have to see how that goes and how vaccination and other mitigation efforts go in the next several weeks. But I really do hope that we can come together for some fantastic discussion in October and move the needle on that a little bit further and allow for some more robust discussion. It is true that not everyone's going to agree on everything, and we're hoping that everybody can find something that's very important to them within the CEDS, and that we can have a shared desire to have an economic development district, which provides that framework moving forward for someone that Indianapolis MPO as the backbone organization for the EDD to track those performance measures on a regular basis, to convene people on a regular basis, to track what's going on and facilitate conversations and follow those pillars that the IMPO as an organization has of convene, inform, plan, and fund, and really bring more funding opportunity to the region through the Economic Development Administration. I know right now it seems like there's lots of money floating around everywhere with the American Rescue Plan and the infrastructure plan, but long-term, an EDD is a tool that we don't have in our toolbox, and that's one of them that I'm pretty excited about, and I think a lot of people in the region are excited about. So making sure that we're working toward that is also something that we need to keep moving forward. And I'm doing this work not for job security for me, although I'm going to be super excited to be working on this, but because I really do believe that Central Indiana is better working as a region, and that all of these things, economic development, land use, transportation, housing, are integrally connected to making quality place, which is what we have for ourselves and to sell to others to attract them to the region and allow for us to grow. So that's kind of 2 cents I'll throw out there. If anyone else wants to jump in, we certainly have some time remaining to do that. But thank you for participating at the level all of you have been participating of. I know we've been asking a lot of you.
Well, thank you, everyone. As always, if there are any questions on the process, please do not, or any of the information that we shared today, I will send out this slide deck to you all, send it over to Rose and she can share it with you. If any of you did not receive the link to the Economic Explorer, or you have any challenges getting that software or opening that up, please reach back out to us. We're happy to help troubleshoot with you. But thank you again for your participation. This is a really exciting part of the planning process right now. And I will say for the October meeting, the opportunity workshop is probably the best part of the entire process. I'm really excited that we will be able to hopefully convene in person. It truly is workshop style. We will be discussing those draft strategies, actually looking at how they align in the region, the metrics that are associated with pulling in all of the different partners, both traditional and untraditional economic development partners that will actually be able to move those strategies forward. So exciting time in the planning process. We are moving fast at this point. So in our very first conversations last spring, you would probably hear me say, if you think of something next week, next month, you're always able to reach out. I would encourage you to start speaking now and not hold thoughts back until next month at this point. But with that, thank you so much, everyone. And it's been really exciting to work with you all, and look forward to convening again, either in next month or in our working groups later this week. And with that, take care.
Everyone, thank you.